don't you start your
Are they
meeting, then
ready?
we'll start ours.
All right. Okay, so welcome to the Monday, August 21st, 2023 joint meeting with the school committee and the select board. And I'm calling the school committee meeting to order and handing it over to Dan Pembroke.
Okay, and I'm calling the Monday, August 21st joint meeting, select board open. So we have 4 candidates this evening that we're going to conduct interviews with for the open interim school committee appointment. And if those folks would want to come right up here in front, it's Adam Murphy of School Street, Patrick Chilcott of Four Winds Drive, Jeff McMaster of Mattakesett Street, and Jennifer Page of Palm Grange Graziano of Lake Street. Hello, everyone.
How are you?
I just want to first welcome all of you. It's important for people to serve in the town, and I'm glad that we have 4 worthy candidates that are willing to serve for this interim seat. And this interim seat will be vacated on the next election. So that's how that seat will be filled for the remainder of that term. So what I'd like to do is welcome the candidates to have an opening statement of 2 minutes. There's not going to be a time clock, but just be respectful of everyone's time. I want to make sure that you get all your points in. And for no other reason other than the order that we have on the agenda here, that's the order that I'll begin with. And then as we move forward, we'll rotate it so that the same person doesn't start all the time. So we'll begin with Adam Murphy.
Good evening, and thank you for the opportunity to speak with you regarding the vacancy here on the school committee. In 2019, my wife and I began our look for our forever home. We sold, in the process of selling 2 homes, we planned our wedding and getting ready to start our next chapter. We looked all over the South Shore, wanting to stay close to our families, friends, and our careers. Every house we looked at in surrounding towns, we always kept coming back to the town of Pembroke. We fell in love with the town. We were impressed by the school committee, the school system rather, and the community. My wife and I both grew up in small towns with town school systems and close-knit communities. Her in the neighboring Marshfield, and I from the small town of Avon. So we really liked the ideas of the schools being town-based and not a regional school system. We made the decision that after we were settled in our home here in Pembroke, that she and I would become active members of the town. Currently, we both serve as members of the Pembroke Titans Football and Cheer Board and continue to expand our involvement into other organizations and programs throughout the town. Over the past year, I became a licensed part-time bus driver with First Student in Pembroke to help fill the gaps on our bus routes, the field trips, and the sports trips in town. In my professional life, I work for Boston Harbor City Cruises, where I started 24 years ago as a deckhand to my current role as port director. My career growth over the past 24 years has allowed me to become proficient in project and operations management, budget assessment and reallocation of funds as needed, transparent communication, collaboration as a team and a community, as well as the prioritization of projects to ensure the funding accordingly. These skills have allowed me to see the big picture, but also focus on the details and collaborate with ease to have the projects accomplished in a timely fashion. If appointed to the school committee this evening, it would be my goal to make sure that the children's teachers and administrators have the safest buildings to attend and work in. School safety has come a long way from the days of bus evacuation and fire drills. School safety and security systems are evolving, and we want to make sure that we keep anyone who works, attends, or visits the schools of Pembroke, that they are safe. The responsibility of the security falls on the entire community. Additionally, I'd want to make sure that we are providing the kids in our district with the education that suits their way of learning and the interest, whether it's at one of our 3 wonderful elementary schools, our amazing middle or high school, as well as opportunities outside of that, such as South Shore Tech. It's our duty to provide access to equitable education that will form the next generation of not only lawyers, doctors, and corporate leaders, but also electricians and nurses and so much more. I want to work to find a way to make the budget work to meet the needs of our community but most of all for the children. I'd like to work to bridge the gap between the parents and the schools. We should be providing open and clear communications about what's going on in the school and in the classrooms. I would like to see the students get more involved in the process. When I was in high school in Avon, I served as the student representative to the school committee for 4 years. I found my time as the representative to the board invaluable because it allowed me to understand why some of the decisions were being made and able to explain to my friends why the issues may have happened that we weren't happy about. Additionally, it made the student body feel as if they were part of the process and had a voice, which is my personal belief that it is a necessity for our students to have a voice in the process. Finally, if appointed, I would want to work to get all of the party politics out of our schools, ensuring that the focus is primarily on the fundamental education of our kids. Our children don't need to be exposed to party politics until they're of the age that they're able to understand and comprehend the politics. I look forward to discussing this further this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Next to speak will be Patrick Chilcott.
So thank you all for the time. First, I want to thank the three of you. Standing up and coming forward and offering the service to town is not an easy thing to do. It takes courage. And I think all of us are thankful for your willingness to get involved and be part of the community and part of Pembroke. We're at a very unique time right now in the town, and specifically in the committee. We have a very young member base within the committee due to vacancies, a new member starting in May. You know, when you look at the combined remaining service of the 4 sitting school committee members, it's under 10 years, or just under 10 years. I was first elected to the school committee in 2007, and I served until 2019. I was very happy to be retired. I was very happy to be done because I spent a lot of time. I spent the last 15 years advocating for a free, fair, and equal education for all kids in Pembroke. We on the committee during that time had a core set of values that were incredibly important in our decision making, and it started with the classroom. Every decision we made was about how it affected the classroom and how it affected kids, and then we emanated out from there. So before I made a decision that I was going to put in for the appointment, I talked to each and every one of you. I wanted to get a feel for where things were today. It's been 4 years since I sat around that table, and I really wanted to understand it. We really need to focus in a couple of key areas. Our enrollment from fiscal year 2020 to fiscal year 23 has declined 8.347%. That's approximately 232 kids that have left our district, which results in a funding decline of $3 million. In that same period, our operating budget on the school system grew by $2.5 million. I understand it, right? I understand that inflation's a bit out of control and that things are more expensive. But that business model does not work. We can't sustain a district with a gap in funding of almost $3 million and an increase in expenses of $2.5 million. Because what that means is that the town manager has to make up $5.5 million, and that has to come from the rest of the town in order for that to sustain itself. That's one thing that we have to tackle via budget sub. There has to be a longer-term enrollment strategy put in place. We focused for a long time on saying no more kids. We had a bubble that went through the system, and that bubble really was the graduating classes of 2017 to 2019. When that left, we didn't pivot. We can actually accept new families, young families, more kids, more students. We haven't been able to do that in the past. So that is one primary goal that I think we have to set our sights on. The other is the achievement gap. We all know, and we've read, and we've seen nationally and locally here in Pembroke and in the Commonwealth, COVID did a number on achievement, and we have to focus on achievement. Curriculum and pedagogy, in other words, the way teachers actually are able to present the material, have to present the material so kids can learn, has to be a focal point in Ed Sub, has to be a focal point in Policy Sub. I think we also have to be very careful, and Adam, I agree, national politics has no place on this sitting school committee. If we have issues in Pembroke, we're going to address them in Pembroke. But we do not need to belabor this committee with national political issues that candidly aren't germane or that aren't affecting the overall committee. I believe that this committee can be a strong one, and I believe that this committee can be one that can lead in the future, but they are going to need some history. These guys are going to need some stability. There's so much newness out there that having that stability, having that history, having that mentorship, having that knowledge is something that can only benefit us. So I offer you 35 years of very strong, deep, senior, professional, financial, corporate experience. I was a strategy consultant for several years, and I'm currently the CFO of a behavioral health nonprofit. And in a post-COVID world, I think all of those skills are absolutely transferable and germane. I look forward to working with all of you. I know each and every one of you pretty well, and I really believe that the committee can do well going forward. So thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak will be Jeff McMaster.
Good evening. I want to thank you all for allowing me to interview for this position tonight. It's an honor. I've been in Pembroke for the past 14 years, and I have a background in higher education. I transitioned into higher education from sales management and banking. Currently, I'm an administrator in higher education, so I understand about some of the challenges due to enrollment and some of the budget constraints that higher education and public education and the funding and budgeting. I deal in $37 million in tuition revenue, and I stand on the financial aid committee and budgeting for about $30 million. I personally don't have kids that attend Pembroke High School or any Pembroke school. My stepdaughter, attended Hanover because my wife is a teacher in Hanover, and she went to school there. My son lives on the North Shore and is now a junior at University of Maine, and my stepdaughter's at Clemson. Some would say that's a negative, but I'd like to say I come in with open eyes, no personal agenda, and my desire is to use my skills that I've used in education and budgeting, and I have served as the APA, which is an American Professional Association union within Framingham State, so I'm familiar with union negotiations and the ability to work with administrators on the opposite side. I've seen what my wife goes through as the union rep in Hanover and the negotiations she goes through, so I speak from the administrator side on what that is like and the constraints of the budget and what needs to be done. And sometimes hard decisions have to be made, unfortunately, because you can't run at a deficit all the time, and sometimes you have to prioritize programs. And then you have to manage to that, and you have to align the budget to achieve the goals. So I appreciate you all taking the time and allowing me to speak this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Next to speak will be Jennifer Page Pongratz-Graziano.
Good evening. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. Thank you for letting me speak today. I think I bring a very different perspective from the other gentlemen here tonight. I have lived in Pembroke since 2001. I got married, moved here, have raised my children here. I am a veterinarian. I attended a public school at Carver High School, graduated top of my class, attended Cornell, which is an Ivy League institution, graduated early from that and participated in a graduate program, getting my veterinary degree in 7 years instead of 8. So on paper, I am very much a public school proponent. I'm the type of person that most principals say we want our students to do this pathway and they'll succeed. My own children had different agendas. I have 4 children. My eldest, my son, participated in homeschooling through till 6th grade and then went to Pembroke Public Schools, elected to come home for 2 years while he figured out what he wanted to do. He was a very busy kid, did well working with his dad on the farm, and decided to come to Pembroke High School because he didn't get into Silver Lake. And then he was able to get into Silver Lake as a sophomore and transferred and did quite well in that program. My second child was homeschooled. She hit high school and wanted to go to public schools, but unfortunately we were in the midst of COVID. So she elected to stay home. We tried to transfer her into the public schools, and there was a lot of rigidity around that process, around what credits she could get for homeschooled curriculum, how those credits could be applied. She did attend Pembroke High School for a year, loved it, and then elected to leave Pembroke High School because they were not able to offer her what she wanted for what she wanted to pursue. She left Pembroke High School, came back to homeschooling, and dual enrolled at Bridgewater State. She was a straight A student there, graduated as a homeschool student, and will be attending a trade school in a couple months. And then I have two younger daughters. One attended Pembroke High School for a year. It was not well suited for her. She has some mild learning disabilities, and she's a very smart girl. And she struggled with the school structure. She's home, doing great, plans to attend college, is probably going to be dual enrolled as soon as she gets her license in the spring. And then I have my last daughter, who is a Pembroke student. She's been at the middle school for 2 years. She's going to be a freshman at Pembroke High School. I've also hosted a multitude of exchange students from various countries. It's interesting to get their perspective on our school system. I run my own business now. For many years, I was involved heavily with 4-H in the community. I know many of the families from taking care of their pets through my veterinary service at various clinics in the area. It's my hope that my perspective as a parent of students who needed curriculum outside of the traditional and who has seen how other families in other areas merge their homeschool students with their public schools. I've been able to talk to students from all kinds of districts and their parents about how they creatively meet student needs. And I think some of that perspective would be very helpful as we negotiate and figure out how to offer different school pathways to our kids moving forward. We need to make sure that kids are prepared for college, which I think generally Pembroke does a great job at. But we also need to find pathways for those students who plan to go into entrepreneurial roles. We need to make plans for those students who plan to go into the trades, and I think that is really, really vital for them. I hope that you'll consider me as a legitimate candidate. I work for myself. I have a lot of flexibility. I have some things coming up in this upcoming few months that will make my availability even greater. And it's my hope that I can hit the ground running, really get on board with what's going on here, and be a non-political voice for getting our students the kinds of education that they need with some really creative and different out-of-the-box thinking.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
The next part of this program will be to ask questions of each candidate individually. And just using the order, the lineup that we have on the agenda, started with Adam for opening statements. I'll skip down. We'll begin with questions. The next person on the list is Patrick Chilcott. So Patrick, if you want to come to the podium, please. And for the public and both the board and the committee, we have a set of questions that we have shared through this board and this committee, as well as the candidates, so that they can do a little prep work. And the most important thing is to make this question and answer period as fair to everyone as possible. So what I'd like to do is have every member of the school committee one at a time ask a question, and then we'll move down to the select board. And if there is a secondary question, just raise your hand and we'll come back to you. But one question at a time, and I don't want to leave anything out, especially if it's an important question that'll help you make an informed decision.
Dan, can I ask a question though, before you start, just from a process perspective? Am I going to be up here for all of your questions, or are you rotating us through question by question?
You will be up there for the entire row of questions, and then we'll bring each candidate in individually.
Thank you.
And then we need to be rigid enough to have structure, but we don't have to be so rigid that if there are questions that come up to the committee members or the board members after someone has already spoken, we can kind of have a roundhouse of questions for the candidates. So I don't want to leave anything out, but I do want to have some structure to this. All right, very good. So for the school committee, did you want to begin, please?
Sure. What was your support for Article 10 for the VOTEC, the last town committee, and kind of how do you feel like having your experience with being on school committee kind of before the VOTEC issue really became what it is right now without us being member towns? I just kind of want to know your background and history on that.
Yeah, sure. So I voted for the formation of the committee. I think exploring pathways for kids is a really good thing. The VOTEC issue, candidly, is no different than any other issue that ultimately we're going to face for me, right? It's about how does it affect kids, how does it affect parents, and then how does it affect teachers and administrators at the end of the day. Not every kid is built to go to college, and I think we have to recognize that. I have a nephew that didn't have vocational technical education capability up in Andover and sent him back about 2 years, right? The VOTEC and having vocational education for kids is an incredibly important component to the educational offerings we have. I spent, when I was trying to understand and figure out sort of this issue and why it has so much fervor and where we are, what I do in any school committee type of issue is I went out and I did research, I went out and gained a better understanding, and then I talked to some people in the community. Spent about an hour with Melissa Hooley a couple days back, and it was a great conversation, right? Because what's very clear is our current environment is very different than what that environment was 7 or 8 years ago when we sort of tackled it. But the thing that we have to realize, at the end of the day, we're going to have to understand that some of this is going to come down to dollars and cents. If we can't figure out a strategy to deal with our existing operating budget, and if we can't figure out a strategy to deal with that existing gap, the schools are going to need an operational override to fund their budget. We've passed one in this town, and I know it because Aaron and I did about 22 public forums in order to pass it. We've never passed an operational override outside of that one. We may need one for the schools if we do not get on this and create a fiscal strategy to figure out with the declining enrollment and what the deficit is ultimately going to look like and how to close that gap. The reality is there is a significant expense with vocational, with joining or creating that opportunity inside of Pembroke. Joining, estimated to be with the debt exclusion override about $20 million. So my view there is we would need to be able to be coordinated. We would need to have the data in order to go and explain to the town why we would need an operational override to pay for the ongoing cost, and then a debt exclusion override to pay for the one-time cost because, as I understand it, they're building a new building. None of us here can say what we would do or what we wouldn't do because we don't have the data. We have a committee that is literally going through and mining through the data to make a presentation, but the irony is not one person sitting around this table or one person up here in the front row can tell you what they would do because they just don't have the information. I support it on its basis. I support it strongly in principle. We've got to come up with a strategy and a capability to pay for it.
Thank you.
Very good. And just a point of clarification for the members and for the candidates, that not everyone will have a question. Someone may have a question that's important to them that's already been asked. So you do not necessarily have to ask a question, and you're not beholden to the questions that we've already shared. If something came to you in the interim from when we sent those out and shared them to now, you're free to ask any question. It's your prerogative. Mike?
Yeah. Hey, Patrick.
Hey, Mike.
So I guess I have sort of two questions because I think you have kind of answered one of them. I think you went over the 2 minutes in your introduction, but
Tend to be slightly loquacious.
I wanted to ask you. Initially, I was going to ask, what do you see as the top challenges to the board right now? I think you've gone through that somewhat, and what do you want to accomplish? Like, why are you coming back? Why do you want to come back?
So, again, I spent 15 years out in this community advocating for free, fair, and public education for students in Pembroke. But I went a step further, and on multiple times, I asked the citizens of this town to dig into their pockets and to put more on their tax levy in order to support and pay for schools. And what I told people over and over again was, good schools equal good property values. What I see right now, without a little bit of experience and some mentoring and what have you, is a very young committee, and I worry with somebody brand new that has never been in this role, that is going to be figuring it out while they're getting ready to run for re-election or for election. The committee's going to be ballasted a little bit. They're going to wander a bit, right? And so honestly, it was disingenuous to me to not stand up and say, hey, I can help, right? I've talked to several of you over the last couple of weeks, and a couple of you said, hey, I don't know what I don't know. I know what you don't know. I've been there, right? I've lived it. And so for me, I'm here solely to give back to a community that I asked to give back to our school district for a really long time. And I feel like I owe it to the town, I owe it to the administration, and I owe it to the kids to do that.
Thank you. Dave?
Patrick, you brought up some great points, and the one that I'm most intrigued with, how would you, if you have a thought on this, fix that enrollment? We're losing 232 kids. Now, we know we lose some kids to Archie's and BC High and, maybe Norfolk Aggie and stuff, but 232 is a bigger number than I thought it was, I'll be honest with you. I was a little bit stunned when you made that comment.
So there's a couple of things that I think we have to do, right? And this is where relationships in town and in town government become critical. And that's something that, Dan can tell you, having been here for a bit, John can tell you, having been around this table for a bit, you form them from working with people over time. We're gonna need zoning, we're gonna need planning, we're gonna need Sue to continue our work on the master planning committee. We need to start to figure out how do we attract young families in town. It's not about building 55 plus only anymore, right? We did that because candidly, I remember we sat around the table going, we're busting at the seams, we have no more room. We got lots of room and we have lots of ability to be able to do that. We need to look at alternate revenue sources, right? So are there things that we can do with the space that we have as far as rentals and in additional income and sort of those types of things? Part of what we have to do with the VOTEC thing, if we have $20 million, we need to do the study. I'm not saying this is the right thing to do. I don't know that it's the right thing to do. So the data, if we had $20 million, what could we put together? What revenue could we generate if we built something here? Now, the reality is we would probably have to take an entire building. We would have to retrofit an entire building, likely, and it costs more than $20 million. But we need some of those numbers. We need to refresh our enrollment studies. So we did enrollment studies every couple of years and projections every couple of years. Have we stemmed the tide? That's okay, Sue. Have we stemmed the tide? In other words, is the 232 only going to be 235 next year? Or is the 232 looking to be 282 next year? The way we're funded, right? So we have two main funding mechanisms in the schools. It's Chapter 70 funding, which is a per pupil funding, and that's where we're getting crushed because we don't have the pupils for the per pupil. And then it's local aid. We're not going to get much more in local aid. So the 10 years prior to COVID and prior to one-time money, our local aid increased on average under 1%. I think the last time I ran the number, it was like 0.87%, right? Back then, inflation was only 2.5% and 3%, and we are looking at a budget rollover of $1.5 million additional dollars every year. We now have 7% inflation, and we're going to go back to the under 1%. The one-time money, the ARPA money, all that's gone. So those are a couple of things that I would like to do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sue.
So first of all, I just want to say thank you so much for even considering
Thank you.
helping out, because you do really have an amazing amount of knowledge, and I'm very appreciative. I did have one question. If you were appointed, do you plan to run for re-election in the spring?
I don't. I mean, a couple of people have said, hey, you never know what's going to happen, right? You might want to, you might get into it and feel like, hey, I have to do it. Is that possible? It is. But I am nothing if not highly transparent, Sue, right? As I stand here today, I don't plan to run for re-election. However, the difference, and normally I would say don't consider a candidate not willing to do that because they're going to take 8 months just to figure out, I use this phrase a lot, where all the bathrooms in the schools are, right? They're so new, they don't know the work. They're not able to really understand what to do. I show up tomorrow night, I'm ready to work, right? It's old hat. I feel like I can get done in 8 months and offer you something that candidly no candidate up here can offer you. And the work that I'll do in 8 months will likely outpace the work of somebody brand new for the next 1.5 to 2 years. I know it that well. But I also have something else that no other candidate can give you. When you have a new person that joins the board, the superintendent and the assistant superintendent have spent a lot of time with that person. You know, it's about just explaining and helping them understand and helping bring them along, and you have to do that, right, just to get that person ready, to get that person prepared. It's not a criticism in any way, it just is what it is. That's one less thing that the superintendent and assistant superintendent then have to focus on. It's that they can focus on their duties on running the school system and what have you. So normally, I would say that's a negative. I think, again, in my case, because of what I bring, it's not.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Steve?
Yes. Patrick, hello.
How are you, sir?
Good, thank you. So, as representatives of the town, one of the issues at the forefront of many parents and elected officials' minds, as very clearly evidenced by some of the questions submitted by the public, are concerns about how identity politics and ideology appear to have increasingly inserted themselves into schools across the nation, the state, and even here in Pembroke. Do you think this is a reasonable concern? And if so, is that something you would have the appetite to meaningfully address within your term?
Yes, and yes. I can't be more definitive than that. Look, when I first started doing this back in 2007, I have friends that cancel out my vote every time I go to vote, right? And we get together and we laugh and we have a good time and we joke about things. Libby Bates and I sit at a bar and have a drink together, but we will yell at each other on town meeting floor. We've lost that. And it's because of what you're talking about, right? We've segregated people, black and white, victim, oppressor, good, bad, gay, straight, this, them, him, her, whatever it is. We keep segregating people. And now we're not talking to each other. People aren't talking to each other, community members aren't talking to each other, government officials aren't talking to each other. I think it's incredibly detrimental for society. Forget about the school system for a second. However, the other thing, not however, but the other thing is the classroom is meant to be an objective place of learning. It is never going to be okay for a teacher of any political persuasion or background or anything else to impart their viewpoints on their students. I was raised with that, right? Growing up, and I venture to say I'm fortunately older than a lot of you sitting at the table. So the reality is this is a long-standing traditional thing within education, right? And it's not okay. But we have to be very careful, because the other thing that I've seen over the last couple of years, even seen it in the last couple of weeks, on the right and the left is this incredible ideological zealotry. I refer to them as the pitchfork posse. And they show up when there is one issue or one fervor or one what have you. That's also not okay. It has to be relevant to what's happening here in Pembroke, and we have to be willing to attack our problems for our problems. We have to do it like a family would do it. We have to figure it out, and it has to be okay. The last thing I will say, though, is I have always championed the right of the parent. Parents are the single most critical linchpin in a child's education. I'm a huge proponent of teachers, and I remember we would joke around the table about schools are now raising children. Teachers don't want to raise children, right? Parents raise children. And that, I think, is critically important, and we have to continue down that path of allowing parents a role in the education of their children, allowing parents a place. And my wife went in and, she ran every single elementary school field trip for 8 years, right? Parents need to be part of the school system. I mean, you lived it, Tracy, for far too long, I think.
Still going.
Right? So hopefully that answers your question.
Thank you, yes.
Thank you. And Tracy?
Hi, Patrick.
Hi.
Most of my questions have already been taken, as you might have guessed. I wondered if you could describe for me what an effective school committee member would look like.
Sure. So we have a legal job, right? We make policy and we handle the budget. Those are the two things that the school committee member does. We hire the superintendent and we hire the business manager. Those are the two hires we have. The superintendent and her staff hire everybody else. So technically, that's what a school committee member does. They make policy and they put together a budget. The reality, though, is we become a liaison back to the community, right? We become a liaison to all of you in town government, right? We are a method of communication. But when I first started, a woman who was on the committee for a long time, her name was Eileen Hutchinson, said to me, the school committee only speaks as 5. No one individual speaks for the school committee. And she's right about that. But the most critical role that we have is to be advocates of public education in the community and liaisons into the community, because it's where we understand what the real topics are that are on people's mind, the real concern that are on people's mind. We had the band thing in my last year. I mean, there were 200 people sitting there, right? I was the chairman at the time. I had to bring up the band there, right? And it was a big deal. And, you know, Aaron and I went to a meeting and we were like shouted out by faculty. And I said, you know what, that's fine. I went and talked to kids. And I asked the kids what they wanted. I actually changed my viewpoint because of the conversation that I had with kids. That's what a school committee member is.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Very good. And John?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Patrick, since I know you've been, doing the committee for 12 years, and then when you left, that definitely was different for the committee coming on in, so I appreciate your time.
Thanks, man.
The one thing that I have for you is the new Pathways program. In your tenure going forward, if you are picked for this committee, again, to serve, how can you work with the superintendent to move this forward or expand it?
I don't know a lot about the new Pathways program, John, right? So I'd have to really kind of get the data and the information. The reality, though, is there's no one that sits in front of us here at this table that's going to be able to jump in and work with Aaron on just about anything, right? I mean, Aaron and I have been working together for the last 12, 13 years in kind of settling in and understanding, what the issues are and sort of the way forward and that type of thing, I think is going to be critically important. And my ability to just fit in and slot in and do that, I mean, it's something that I can start doing immediately. I'll do the research, I'll understand what it is, I apologize, I just don't know exactly what the new Pathways program
I'd
is.
like to send a little, certain things that are relevant and also that basically that are finite. So I do apologize for that.
No, it's okay, I don't mind.
But,
It's
to make sure that, being aware of that and how popular and how, well, the first year for this program has been helping out and done, the internships and all that. I can't say enough about it, so I was kind of hoping.
And we have something at the high school now that has the internship capability and what have you. And I mean, we've had that for about 6, 7, 8 years now. And again, for students who may not fit perfectly in the classroom, they get credit. They're out in the workforce, they're out and sort of understand what it is. I mean, it's been wildly successful. Senior project is another name for it. So.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Rich?
Pat, how are you?
Good,
Thanks for
Rick.
stepping up.
Thanks, Barry.
I want to just tighten up on Steve's question, and I'm going to be fair and ask this of all the candidates tonight. Do you support the proposed change in policy by a current school board member to only allow American and Massachusetts flags to be displayed in our schools?
Here's the problem, right? I've talked to the member about this at length. I think it needs more work, right? So I don't know that you can be black and white with something like this. So as an example, we have a long-standing history of supporting student-led, proposals and projects. So we have a Gay Straight Alliance, for example. If they want to have a pride event and they want to use the pride flag at that event, I have no issue with that whatsoever. If somebody wants to put a Biden flag or a Trump flag up, I have a huge problem with that. If someone wants to put up, or if a teacher wants to put up an autism awareness flag, I don't have a problem with that. So I don't know that you can be so definitively cut and dry to say it's only the US flag and the Massachusetts flag. There are other times that those flags can be very relevant within the curriculum, right? So if I'm teaching AP US history and I want to have a Don't Tread on Me flag, and I want to have the Betsy Ross 13-star emblem flag, and I want to have a couple of other things, I see absolutely zero reason for that. If I'm teaching about equal rights, I'm teaching about this Supreme Court case that brought marriage equality in 2018, and I want to use a pride flag for that, I don't have a problem with that. I do, however, think that there is great subjectivity in the way things are implemented right now, especially, do administrators need all of that? Probably not, right? How are administrators ultimately able to implement sort of their discretion, and is it being done fairly? I think those things being looked at and looking at the policy, and we've talked a bit about sort of going back and getting deeper into that policy to maybe not make it so yes or no, black or white, you ban everything, or you only have these two things. I just think that there's more scenarios that have to be considered. Other questions?
Thank you. Are there any follow-up questions?
I don't have any.
I have a question.
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
your letter that you sent suggests that you are committed to bringing your many years of school committee and corporate finance experience to help out of your passion and support for the schools and the community. If you are not selected tonight, would you be just as committed to do so?
Of course.
Thank you.
Very good. Are there any other follow-up questions? All right. Thank you very much, Patrick.
Thank you.
Next in order is Jeff McMaster. Jeff, and we'll go through the same order.
Okay, sure. Hi.
Hi.
What type of interactions, if any, have you had with either Pembroke School Committee or Superintendent Obie, like in the past?
I have no past interaction, I'll be honest.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mike?
Hi, Jeff. Thank you
Hi.
for applying. I was in your seat about 7 months ago, and I know it can be a nerve-wracking experience, so I appreciate you putting yourself out there like this. I guess my question is going to be the same I asked to Patrick earlier. What do you see as the top challenges for the school committee right now?
I think the biggest challenge is going to be the budget and trying to, close the gaps. I think the budget's going to be tough going forward with less enrollment and less funding from the state. And I know there's guaranteed funds from local and from the 70, but I think that it's going to become tougher as population declines and enrollment declines. So I think that's one of the biggest challenges. I also think that when I look at the vocational proposal, I'm a proponent of vocational, but I think it's a big investment. When I look at the South Shore VOTAC, the investment in the MSBA and the building is going to be a huge expense. So I think that you need to look at long-term what that data is and what the long-term return is. And can you utilize what has been established with the Pathways program and build that and be cost-effective, but still provide the learning opportunities with vocational education and be long-term just as effective. So I think those are some of the bigger challenges.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dave?
Hi, Mr. McMaster. It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet
For a
you.
name with a face. kind of a two-part question. One, very impressive resume, by the way. I'm very impressed with that. Do you have any other involvement with the town? And then I can't lie, when I looked at your resume, I said, oh my heavens, this man screams advisory committee, you know, with your background. So, and I don't want to make light of the situation, but I just, again, read your resume, I was pretty impressed.
No, sir, I don't.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Great. Sue?
Very nice to meet you, and I
Nice
want
to meet you.
to thank you as well for, you know, I know it's not easy coming before this board and, you know, going through this sort of firing squad, as I like to call it. So thank you so much. I really appreciate that. One question I had is, you know, I just want to know, in your opinion, what's the relationship between the school committee and the superintendent, in your opinion? And then how do you feel that the relationship should be managed?
I think collaborative is the biggest. I think there should be open two-way communication is the biggest thing, in collaborative. I think the goals should be established. The policies should be talked about. I think the superintendent knows future legislative changes better than what the school committee may know. I think in my role, I deal with, I see policy changes in the horizon, but I can't make the policies changes on my own. So I advise senior staff on what may be coming down the pipe. So we work together when we need to revise those changes so that we're all on the same page. So I view the school committee and the superintendent more as a collaborative relationship, and communication that's on the same page, I think is that. And what I read online, I think that's pretty established in the community.
Thank you so much.
Very good. Steve?
Yes. Jeff, hello.
Hi, Steve.
What are the primary motivations that drive you to serve on the school committee?
I have a passion to give back. I believe in public education. I'm a first-generation college student. I spent a lot of time moving through my school career. My father was in the restaurant business, so I was exposed to a lot of different public schools, some good, some bad. So my desire to serve is, I'm married to a public school teacher for 25 years. So I see the joys and the frustrations she goes through on a daily basis. So I have a passion to serve and to give back to the community.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Tracy?
Hi, Jeff.
Hi.
What would you say sets you apart from the other candidates?
After listening to Patrick, I'm not going to meet Patrick, okay? I will be quite honest. I will run again in May. I think continuity is a big thing. Will I know everything? No. I'm a fast learner. When I got into higher education 14 years ago, I transitioned. I worked for Citibank. I was laid off in 2008. I didn't know anything about higher education, other than I sold products to higher education loans. So I covered Maine and Vermont and parts of Massachusetts. But I had a desire to go work for a school. So I went back to school in my 40s, got my first master's degree. Started answering phones at the front desk of an admissions office, and they said, hey, we have a need for a director of student accounts. Would you like it? I had no clue. I said, sure. We have a manual called a Blue Book, which is all the federal regulations. Took the train home every night and read this lovely manual, all full of regulations. You can imagine how dry it is. So I established all the policies and procedures for the school, and I've worked my way up from there. Went and worked my way up to a bigger school, and then applied to Pembroke State University. And thank goodness I had somebody who was willing to take a chance on me, saw my prior management background, and went from a school of about 700 to a school of about 4,000 with a staff of 10. So I'm confident in my ability to bridge gaps. I deal with a lot of constituents and silos on campus. I have to deal with the Board of Higher Education. I have to deal with senior staff, I have to deal with students, I have to deal with parents, I have to deal with faculty. Each one of them requires a different communication approach. At the end of the day, I have to keep the focus on the students and the parents, while I also have to make sure that the accounts receivable are being taken care of. And that's a tough situation to be in. So I think that's what sets me apart. I don't have a personal agenda other than my desire to serve and give back. And I think that could be a benefit.
Thank you.
Very good. John?
Thank you. I'm on the same boat as Mr. Boyle. I'm basically very impressed with your resume.
Thank you, sir.
But how busy you are with that, when are you going to have time to actually serve on this committee? I apologize that someone laughed, so I
That's
apologize
okay.
for that.
That's okay. I work Monday through Friday. At the point in my career that I have a great staff. I hire the best possible people. I work from home 2 days a week. I have a great boss who supports whatever I do. So if I need to adjust my virtual schedule, I can make the virtual schedule on the day that I have a meeting so that I don't have to commute. Just like today, I had a commitment this evening. I sacrificed going to a concert. This is how important. This is how important. When the meeting came up on August 21st, I said, fine, I'll be here. I may not get it, but it was important for me to show up and put my name in the hat.
Good. Thank you, sir.
What was the concert?
Guns N' Roses.
Guns N'
It's going to
Roses?
take Guns N' Roses. I'm a
that.
child of the 80s. Come on. I mean, you defer.
Well, thank you for that. It's much appreciated. I'm sure you're familiar with my question. Do you support the proposed change in policy by a current school board committee member to only allow American and Massachusetts flags to be displayed in our classrooms in our schools?
You know, that is a third rail, and I really can't commit one way or another. I believe inclusiveness all around, and so I think conversations need to be had, and I know that it's a slippery slope, because if you say yes or no, you sometimes can get into a situation where it can go too far, if that makes any sense. I know where I work is my big policy with my staff is consistency. If you say yes to one student, you have to be consistent going forward. So I think if you allow one flag in, then I think you may have to let all other flags in. And I don't know. So I think you have to have some sort of regulations around what is acceptable, what's not acceptable. Because one might get offended because their flag didn't get in, and another may get in. So I think that more conversation needs to be had, and I'd love to sit around the table to have that conversation, because I think your perspective can change once you hear both sides. I don't think it's black and white.
Thank you.
All right, very good. Are there any follow-up questions?
No, all set.
Okay. Thank you,
Thank
Jeff.
you all for taking the time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Guns N' Roses usually go on late, you might make the show. Axl Rose is never on time.
David can get you there.
Yeah, I'll probably get you backstage.
Very good. And Jennifer?
Thank you again.
Hello there. And we'll do the same lineup.
Okay, I have to relook at my questions.
If you need a moment.
Can you please provide one example of a positive aspect that you believe Pembroke Public Schools is doing right, and one suggestion for an area where the schools might consider a change?
Absolutely, that's a great question, thank you. I have been fortunate enough to have hosted exchange students. My most recent exchange students have participated in some of the school sports. I've been extremely impressed with the community around the sports teams, as well as the dedication of the coaches. I've been very, very impressed with that. My middle daughter has participated in some of the music and play productions. Very impressed with those programs. I think Pembroke is hitting it out of the park there. Some of the language programs, the foreign language programs, I've seen some real dedication with the teachers there, working with my exchange students as well as working with my own personal students. So I think those are some great areas. I've met with my own children's teachers while they were participating and having teacher meetings. And generally speaking, I would say the quality of the teaching staff at Pembroke is really high quality. So I think those are all pluses. I think some of the downfalls of Pembroke, we need to find a way to be a little bit more open in what we can offer our students for alternative types of education. Pathways, I think, are a great first step to that. I think we absolutely need to find a way to get access to voc tech education. Now, I agree with what the others have said. I've been doing my reading over the past few weeks, and that cost is huge. It's gargantuan. It's almost insurmountable. Given the cost of property taxes already, the cost of inflation, it's going to be a big ask for our community to put forth more money for that, for what may be a small number of students. So I think it's going to be really, really vital that we get creative, whether it be through finances, which I think is one arm of that, but also through different opportunities to offer classes to our students. We have a whole host of AP classes, which I think are wonderful. Those are great for getting our students ready and prepared for college. But for those students who aren't ready for college, who don't plan to go to college, we need to have some business courses, and not just for seniors. We need to be exposing these kids to different pathways early on, where they can take maybe a one-term class on the trades. And maybe it's not a hands-on class, but maybe it's a class where they can at least get some idea of what does it mean to be an iron worker, a welder, a builder, a plumber, an electrician, so that they can start thinking, is this a pathway for me forward? Business pathways. It would be wonderful if our students graduated understanding terms like benefits, 401k, pre-tax deduction, health insurance, co-pays. They don't have any idea of this information, and if they're not going on to college, and even if they are, when they get out into the real world and have to adult and live, these things can be huge detriments to their financial security. So making these types of classes available earlier on in the curriculum, I think, is huge. I also would like to see the ability for our community to come together and kind of meet some of these needs. I know that we do have some programs where students can do externships. There's a part of me that wonders, the school schedule as we have it set with this multiple rotating every other day thing makes it very difficult for members of our community with specific talents to jump in and teach a class, to jump in and assist a teacher with a class, to give practical input. For example, when my kids were in the school system, my daughter, she had a lot of experience through her homeschooling with me on our farm, doing multiple surgeries, autopsies. She had done dissections of turtles and chickens and fish and you name it. commit. She had opened it up. She knew her anatomy like the back of her hand. She took a class in the high school, and ultimately that class had a few dissections, and she ended up really helping the teacher help the other students. And I had offered to that teacher, hey, listen, I can get a cow heart and come in and do a heart dissection and review that for you as a veterinarian. That's really hard to schedule. I can't say to that teacher, listen, I'm available every Monday at 2. Because Monday at 2, those students are in biology. But the next Monday at 2, those students are in French. And the next Monday at 2, those students are in gym class. So we lose the ability to tap into our local community resources to improve the quality of our education. And I think that's a big downfall. Now, I understand to some degree why the rotating schedule. No student wants to get up and have math every day at 7:30 a.m., right? Or chemistry, especially not AP chemistry. But I think there may be ways to work around that and make the option for externships, et cetera, more available to more students. Maybe we have first term, periods 1 and 2 are set in the morning. And those are class periods where you can have external instructors come in and assist with a class or run a class. And again, I don't know the specific legalities with the teachers union, et cetera, how that would work. But could it be done? I don't know. I think it's worth exploring. Could those students then take those 2 periods to go elsewhere for an externship and come back? Next term, they have periods 3 and 4 at the beginning of the class period every day. It's something to consider, or something like that, that might open opportunities for more students for more things. I'd also personally like to see, if it's possible, some more club-type sports. My kids, they know they need to work to save for college, and most of the kids in our community do. And a lot of the kids in the community are great at baseball, but let's be honest, they're not going to get $20,000 to go to school for baseball. They need to work. And if you're not willing to commit your 6 days a week to your sport, you really can't participate. It would be great if we had some easy, simple clubs after school where the kids could maybe run with the team, but not participate to the same degree. So they could have at least some of that team camaraderie without having the full schedule. You know, and I understand that there are rules about that as far as competition, but it's kind of a bummer that some of the kids can't participate because they need to work. They need to pay their way.
Thank you.
I hope I answered your question. It's a little long-winded, sorry. I'm a little enthusiastic about that topic.
And Mike?
Thank you. Thanks for applying. Jennifer, really appreciate you giving us this time. And like I've said to other people before, try not to be nervous. You don't seem like you are, though, at least. So.
Not too bad. Not too
No.
bad. It's settling.
I guess the question I have for you was you have a lot of large ideas, big
Yeah.
ideas on education. And you would be on the school committee for 8 months, and then you would, if you wanted to continue on, you'd have to run next time around. What are a couple of things you would like to accomplish in the next 8 months, or if you run and win, you know, over the course of your term on the school committee? I guess I should say more like short term. Like, what do you think we can accomplish?
Short term?
Yeah.
Well, correlating that question with the question asked previously about how much time you can put in and how much time it's going to take to get running on the school board for someone who's new to it. I am in a situation where I work for myself. I have a lot of flexibility. I'm looking at some health concerns that I need to have addressed, which will keep me from wrestling 75-pound golden retrievers who want to love me. I'm going to have to sit down a lot. I love to read. I'm pretty smart. I'm pretty financially savvy. My plan is to sit down and really start asking questions about how do we meet this voc tech need? How do we meet this financial need? Because I saw it with my own daughter. My eldest daughter wanted to be at the public school. She really did. She really wanted to be at the voc tech. It did not happen for her. And even if I'm going to get a little teary about this. If you ask her now, she'll say, my high school, it sucked. It sucked. Now, she did well. She made a decision that was really hard. It was not supported by the principal. It was supported by many of her teachers. and she left the high school to go do dual enrollment. Because for her, as a student who does not have huge finances, she needed to get those credits. She needed to get her degree done so she could move on and get to work in her trade of choice. So I do think that that is a really fundamental thing. We need to figure out how we're going to fund the pathways. Is that something we can continue to do? How else can we bring in those types of education to our school? Secondarily, I think we really need to look at budgeting and finance. It's been brought up repeatedly here. You know, homeschooling, you can homeschool a student and figure out their path for them and do it on budget. Mind you, the parent can't work very much. There's a loss there. But there are definitely ways to reduce a budget without necessarily reducing the quality of the education. And that may mean repurposing. It may mean pivoting away from programs that don't have the same interests anymore that they once had. It's going to be tough. But I think that those two goals are really huge. And then the third goal would be to really try to get away from some of this political infighting and really focus on, we have an obligation to the students in our community so that when they graduate with a high school degree, it means something. One of the questions here was, what does it mean to be a Titan? As someone who employs people, I want to know that if someone says, I graduated from Pembroke High School, and here's my diploma, and here's my transcript, I want to know that those things meant something. That student was in an environment where they were challenged, where they were open to hearing new ideas, where they were willing to hear new ideas. It's part of the reason that I think it's really, really important that we have exchange students come into the school system and offer different perspectives from different cultures. How do they do things? I've had students in my home who have different faiths than me, who have very different backgrounds than me, and it has been a huge blessing to my family and to, and I hope to the school and community as a whole. So I think those would be my three goals. One, other options for schooling outside of the college pathway. Two, meeting some of the budgetary needs. And three, getting down to the business of taking care of our students without a lot of the bickering and fighting. So I'm hoping that my presence, I've not been a political voice in Pembroke. I've been the neighborhood veterinarian. I've been the 4-H leader. I've been involved with the Scouts when my son was little. I'm the person a lot of people know. I hope that most people have had interactions with me where they've seen that I treat people with dignity and respect. If you have a good idea, I want to hear it so we can solve the problems. Okay?
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. And Dave?
I had so many questions I want to ask you. I don't know which one I want to start with, to be honest with you. And I hate to be blunt on this, and I won't use the same word as you do, because my mother would be mad at me if I use that word. When you talk about your child saying it stunk,
Yeah.
my question is, and I say this respectfully, was it the building? Was it the faculty? Was it the experience? Was it the, my math teacher hated me? Was it,
Yeah.
I have a daughter that just graduated, and then she'd come and go, oh, and I'd be like, what? And she'd be like, she couldn't put like a thing
Right.
on it, if you follow me. So that, if I'm not putting you on the spot, and if I am, I apologize.
So let me clarify then.
Yeah.
I don't think that her experience at Pembroke stunk.
Yeah,
I think her high school experience stunk, in part because she wanted to pursue a vocational education, and she was blocked out of that. So during COVID, her option was to go to public school or to stay home and homeschool with me. As a homeschooler, she was able to continue riding her horse, participating in riding lessons, doing things that she would not have had the time to do, and continuing with a lot of the things. She was helping me with my business. This girl can participate in a surgery, she can draw blood. The girl's got talent, okay? For her thing. Don't ask her to do a chemistry problem. Don't ask her algebra 2, okay? But the girl has talent in her field. So by staying out of the public school during COVID, she was able to do some of the things that really prepared her for her goal school-wise and life pursuit-wise. When the schools opened up, she said, Mom, I want to go to school. I want to be with the other kids. And I said, great. And she went. But because her path as a homeschooler had taken her down this route of, well, she didn't take a gym class because she was riding her horse. That was her gym class. She was doing competitive dance. That was her gym class. She couldn't get credit for that. So she needed to take a gym class in the high school in order to get credit. She had taken a world language class. It doesn't count as language. She had taken a class in mathematics that I had taught her, which was 401k, budgeting, how to read your pay stub, etc. It's practical math, how to pay your taxes. The high school offers this class. It's a great class, but unfortunately, you can't take it until you've also taken Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. She hadn't taken those, so they wouldn't give her credit for that class. So she ended up going into the high school. She took some great classes, enjoyed them, had wonderful teachers who were very supportive of her, but she was missing credits. And she would have had to stay an extra year in the public school to graduate from the public school. She says, I can't do that. I can't take a whole nother year out of my life to take classes that aren't even relevant to what I want to do. I want to shoe horses and train horses. She was right. So we took her home, sent her to college, graduated her, and was able to give her the credit for all those classes. And there was unfortunately a lot of inflexibility in how do we get her to get credits for geometry? Can she take a test? No. Can the math department, can I teach her home and the math department creates a test for her so she can pass and get herself ahead so she can be a senior next year? No. There was no flexibility there. And as a parent, I don't know how much of that was because of rules and laws that the principal and the superintendent can't bend. But as a parent, it was also very difficult to find that out. And that's why one of my goals to be on the school committee is to make more transparency about where these curriculum requirements come down and where there can be more flexibility. How does the superintendent work with the school committee? How does the school committee fund things? Even in my reading and with my background, you read about the funding, and it's very difficult to understand. I'm reading through and I say, okay, I need to look up this. I go over to this page, look that up, take some notes.
You go down the rabbit hole.
You go down a rabbit hole, absolutely. That needs to be made much more digestible to people in the community so that they can really understand what they're voting for and what their school is doing. Because otherwise they're judging all of you on your job, not even having any idea of what you're trying to do and what you're dealing with. So I'd like to be a more open, available person for making things more transparent. And I will say, I'm very pleased with the new school website. It's wonderful.
Thank you, Dave. Sue?
One question I had is, I was wondering if you're planning to run for election in the spring.
It would be my goal to run again, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Steve?
Yes. Hi, Jen.
Hello.
I agree with you 100% that politics is a complete distraction from the schools. In that vein, do you feel that there is too much politics in the schools? And if so, do you have the appetite to meaningfully address it?
I think that there have been periods of time where the politics in the school seem to work their little nasty monsters up and create little fires, distract from the main purpose, and then they settle down for a while. I've not been deeply involved with the school to be able to speak to specific incidents, but I definitely get that sense, just in speaking with some of the people I've spoken with about my desire to be on the school committee. Almost 50% of the people I've spoken with have brought up political issues to me. And that surprised me, honestly. So I think it's something that we have to constantly work to find common ground and to refocus. Does that answer your question?
Somewhat.
Do you want to re-clarify? Maybe I can give you more info, or?
It's sufficient, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. Tracy?
Hi.
You mentioned one of your children having some minor learning disabilities at the school. Did you have any interaction with the special ed system?
I did. It was minimal. I know that that was one of the questions here. I have not had a lot of interaction with the special ed system. 2 of my students who are involved with the school did get tested. They passed with flying colors. I'm not sure how much of that is because they had the benefit of a one-on-one tutor for the first 8 years of their schooling. My daughter definitely has some reading disabilities. It's part of what made it difficult for her to stay in the public school, and why she's decided to come home. She is very smart, just like many kids with learning disabilities, and when you can meet those disabilities, they can flourish. I think it is the school's obligation to provide an education for every student they're presented with, and that is a tough thing to do. But I think it's something that we have to make a priority. You're welcome.
Thank you, Tracy. John?
Thank you. Since you talked about homeschooling and being on this committee and running for re-election, as I'm hearing now, how would you work with the superintendent and your colleagues to understand the rules and regulations that DESE mandates to our school districts?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and it's something that I'm really honestly looking forward to understanding more of. Certainly, as homeschoolers, we have a very different perspective on schooling, and we have a very different set of regulations. The public school has to be more formal, and that's something that I've tried to explain to my own kids when they say, why does the public school do this? Well, because there are multiple students. There are multiple families. We have to meet multiple needs. It's not a one-on-one situation. My goal, as it is with working with anyone, whether I've worked in an animal hospital or worked elsewhere, is to work with others to try and come together and meet the needs that are set before us in creative and intelligent ways. So my hope would be that that Superintendent Obie and I could sit down and have a conversation, that she could help educate me, that I could say, hey, what about this? And she might be able to point me in a direction to say, go down this rabbit hole and you'll understand the regulation better. I would very much appreciate that. And I think to some degree there are other parents in the school system who are feeling the same way. They're told no, but they don't really understand it. And I know that there are reasons there are no's. But I also think sometimes there have been no's based on personal preference in terms of, it's too difficult to do this. It's just too difficult for my day right now. And I know I do that sometimes. Sometimes my kids ask me something and I say no, because it's not financially feasible. I cannot buy you a Maserati just because you want one. On the other hand, sometimes they ask me for something and I say no because I've worked all day and I'm tired and I'm not jumping through those hoops right now. So the question is, when there are no's, no, we can't change the schedule in the school. Why? Can we truly not change the schedule in the school? I know that that schedule has been set up for a variety of reasons. I'm sure that there's probably 35 reasons why the schedule is set that way. But is there any way we can change it? Is there any way we can make adjustments? There are other school systems doing things other ways. And I'm very aware of that because my students, as homeschool students, and through the homeschool cooperative that I was on the board of, you meet families from all different communities, and they'll say, oh, well, our school doesn't do it that way, they do it this way. So if there's another public school doing it that way, it probably is legal. Now, will it work for our school? Maybe not. But why not? Can we bridge that gap, or are we stuck in a trench and we just can't see our way out of it, and we're missing lots of opportunity to the left and the right because we're stuck in our trench? I'd like to get out of the trench. Is that helpful?
For your answer, yes.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Thanks for
Rich?
stepping up.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing your story about your daughter, very enlightening. Thank you. I'm sure you heard my question, I'll repeat it
Yeah.
now. Do you support the proposed change in policy by a current school committee member to only allow the American and Massachusetts flag to be displayed in and around our schools?
Okay. I'm going to try and be a little more decisive than the people who have come before me and say, yes, but. Yes, I think that our school as a whole should display our state and our national flag, and that's it. On the other hand, I do believe that students have a right to speak their opinions. They have a right to speak their own voices and their own realities, and to have discussions that disagree with other people. So if your student wants to put a pride flag on their locker or wear it on their backpack or on their sleeve, I don't have a problem with that. I do have some concerns about teachers posting flags of that nature, because I don't think it is up to the teacher to portray any particular political view. But if they're doing some kind of a developmental program about U.S. history and they want to put up U.S. history flags as part of their curriculum, no problem with that. If you're a French teacher and you want to put up the flags of all the countries that speak French, go for it. But I think we have to be very, very careful about politicizing our classrooms and having our teachers fall on one side or another of any political agenda. Now, how that rule would be written, I'd have to review that, because I think it is a slippery slope. I think we have to be careful. It's very important to me that we have free speech in our schools and that our students hear opposing views and are able to do that and then express their own opinion on that eloquently and respectfully. And that would require not banning speech. But as a school, I think the school most definitely should represent the town, the state, and the country that it is being funded by, and that it has been given a distinct mandate to serve.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good, thank you. Are there any follow-up questions?
I have one follow-up question.
Yes, sir.
Given the mix of schooling experiences for you, your children, and your exchange students, what are some of the more novel concepts and/or ideas you would like to bring to the Pembroke public school system?
I think there are a lot of options for tapping into resources within our community. There are a lot of curriculum options, whether they be online or written curriculums. I would like to reach out to some other school districts that are integrating their homeschoolers in a different way than Pembroke does, and see how they manage that. How do they manage having students in the building for 3 periods but not for the other 3? How do they manage? Do those students get diplomas? Do they receive transcripts? How does that work? I think we really need to be very open to talking to other school districts and see how they're doing things. And there are a whole host of curriculums out there available online. Certainly we don't want to go back to COVID times when online studying meant you're stuck in one room all day for 8 hours looking at a screen. Our students need interaction, but there may be some ways to have students take an interactive class online during a study period, where you have a study period with one teacher monitoring their screens and seeing this student is indeed at Bridgewater State taking their business class. This student is online taking their sign language class. This student is taking another class. These don't have to be AP classes, but there are a lot of places out there offering high school credit classes that we could potentially partner with or make available to our students.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Very good. Are there any other follow-up questions? All right. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thank you so much for your time, Joe.
Thank you.
Next, Adam. And we'll begin again with Allison.
Hi.
Hey, Allison.
So I know you've been attending, multiple meetings in the past. So in the past year or so, has there been a decision the school committee has made that you would have handled differently or thought about, approached differently?
Well, to answer that question truthfully, I don't know, because I don't know all the backstory behind every issue that came up on the board when I would come to a meeting. You don't know what happens in the background, so every situation is unique, and every situation would require a unique view. So every situation would be different, so there is no situation I could see that I would have potentially voted one way or the other one.
Okay, thanks. I guess the next question I'll ask is, if you got this vacancy, what subcommittees would you be most interested in?
For me, it'd probably be the policy and the education subcommittees as well as the budgetary. But wherever I can fit best with my background, be where I would want to end up.
Very good. Mike?
Hey, Adam, thanks for coming back into this boiler room
Yeah.
again and doing this again. I just want to ask you, how do you think your specific skill set could benefit the school committee?
So one of the things that I have is I have a large background in operations, in day-to-day operations, and I oversee a staff of 175. I oversee 22 vessels. We're operating out of 8 different locations that are moving from 5 in the morning until midnight at night, every day, 7 days a week during the summertime. And then during the winter, we still run 7 days a week, slightly smaller staff. What I see is that the board here has a makeup of all financial background. And I'm not discounting anybody's background in anything, but everyone has a strong background in finance, where nobody has a strong background in operations in the day-to-day, of how to make things. You guys all know how to make the decisions for the money. I would be able to help you in figuring out how to get the money to where it needs to go operationally by knowing how to move the buckets around so that everything kind of works out in the long run. So it's just, sometimes you just need a second set of eyes that knows it from the non-financial and the operational point of view.
Thank you, Mike. And Dave?
Adam, thank you. As I do notice you at all the meetings.
Yes.
And to think you're a part-time bus driver, you're a saint. You're a good man, sir. Question, I believe you to be a big proponent of the VOC ed piece.
Yes.
What do you think, and I just say this hypothetically, I think Patrick said specifically, we don't have the data, we don't have the numbers. What do you think of us doing our own in-house? Do you think, I know retrofitting and let's kind of say dreamland, do you think we could do it in Fantasy Island?
Yeah, I think it's an option that needs to be looked at. Do I think it's the right option? Probably not, but I think it's an option. We need to know all the answers to the questions. We need to, as Patrick stated, we need to be able to tell the town, hey, we looked at column A, we looked at column B, we looked at column C. South Shore Tech is probably the most feasible option, right, money-wise. So we would probably want to look in that direction, but we need to know that we couldn't make up the money to make our own folk tech. Would we be able to get other participating towns, or would it just be Pembroke? Which is that's a hard one to kind of navigate. We'd have to really do our due diligence and research on that to find out whether or not other towns would have interest in coming into Pembroke so that we could actually reinvest in the folk tech program.
Thank you.
Very good. Sue?
Adam, thanks again for coming out the third time, going for that, I appreciate, all of that. My question for you is, I want to know what, in your opinion, what is the relationship between the school committee and the superintendent, and how do you believe it should be managed?
So, as some of the previous candidates have said, it's got to be a collaborative operation. We don't, and I'll take it from what I do in my job. I can't get what I do done unless I've got the other people in the other departments. And so we all work together as a team, and that's how it has to be managed. But there has to be a head coach, and that head coach has to be the chairman of the school committee, who has to be the person that is the leader of what the board says, or what the committee says to the superintendent, and how the superintendent interacts with the school committee. But it needs to be collaborative across the board so that everybody has an equal voice. And as Patrick said, you have to have just one voice. You can't have 5 separate opinions sitting on the board. It has to be one voice. And that one voice has to include the superintendent as well. So you have to have, that's the only way you'll get all the information you ever need.
Thank you, Sue. Steve?
Yeah, same question as the other candidates. Do you think that politics has become an issue in the schools? And if so, do you have the appetite to meaningfully address it within your term?
Yeah, absolutely. I truly believe that politics has become an unbelievably big issue in the school system, not only in this town, but in surrounding towns and across the state and the country. And that the left and the right are both trying to insert their politics into the school, and that's not what the school system is for. The school system is to develop our children in the town to be our future leaders, our future doctors, nurses, electricians, plumbers. But when you start inserting the politics in it, kids aren't of the age to understand it. So they're not able to understand and comprehend what you're talking to them about. If you talk to them when they're at the appropriate age to have that conversation, as a parent, then you should be able to do that. But the school system should not be involving any politics in the classrooms at all, ever.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And Tracy?
Hi, Adam.
Hi, Tracy.
Are you planning on rerunning in the upcoming election?
I am. I will be rerunning in May, yes.
So
John?
you're glutton for punishment. Good job.
I am.
You brought up school safety in your opening comments. My question would be, how would you go about that on recommending of stuff that we're already doing with public safety officials in our town already, on trying to get financial means to either upgrade security or just maintain what we have, because they do a pretty good job, as I see, going forward.
So there's always room for improvement. Nobody can say that we always have a perfect system, right? If anybody said we have the perfect security system, the perfect safety system, they'd be wrong. There's no way. There's always room for improvement. We improve on a daily basis. I work with the Mass State Police, the Boston Police. I can list the alphabet soup that I work with on a daily basis, and they've become a great resource for me. They've also become a great resource for me in learning how to get the funding at the state level as well as at the federal level. So I'd be able to kind of help navigate how do we get the funding from an outside source, such as FEMA, DHS. They all have these grants, they all have money that's available, and they're all more than willing to give the money up. One of the biggest, one of the biggest agencies that deals with school safety would probably shock you, it's the U.S. Secret Service. They run all of their trainings are based on, the Secret Service runs all their trainings based on school safety. So they are a huge advocate for it, and they are more than willing to help find funding for open spaces, for soft targets, hard targets, and all that. So I would be looking to utilize some of my connections in the federal and the state government to try to gain some more funding for us.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. And Rich?
I'm sure you heard my question, I'll repeat it. Thanks for stepping up, Adam. Do you support the proposed change in a policy by a current school committee member to only allow American and Massachusetts state flags to be displayed in and around our schools?
All right, so yes and yes, to answer your question. My stance on this would be, it's very simple. I'd be looking for a policy that requires the American flag and the state flag to be displayed visible in classrooms and on school property, and to prohibit flags unrelated to the curriculum. Flags from another country in a world history class, or Black Lives Matter flag, or rainbow flag to celebrate Pride Month, for example. Those can't be displayed year-round throughout the year, but they could be displayed during the time of there. So Pride Month, or as Jen said, the world history class that wants to put up the flags of different countries around the world. But that would be my stance, is that unless it's directly related to the curriculum, only the American flag and the state flag should be flown in our buildings.
All right, thank you. Are there any follow-up questions?
No.
No.
Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Adam.
So we have completed the question portion of tonight's meeting. We'll go on to a 1-minute closing statement from each of the candidates. And using the list that we have on our agenda and staggering, so no one starts more than once, we'll begin with Jeff, then go on to Jennifer, then Adam, then Patrick. Jeff.
Again, I want to thank you all for allowing me to come in and speak. It's a tough decision, varying degrees of experience. Somebody that's served on the committee for a long time, people that have kids in the system, and me who doesn't have kids in the system. Just asking for an opportunity to use my experience and willingness to serve, and I want to appreciate everybody's time this evening, and thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
sir.
so much.
And Jennifer?
I'd like to thank you all for having me here tonight and letting me speak. I want to reiterate that I have been a member of this community for over 20 years. I've recently started a business in this community. I have students in this community. I plan to be here for a very long time. It is my goal to help the students who are coming up to have the same opportunities that I had, and more so. I'd like to open the schools up to more opportunity for students who are more like my children, who have a need for vocational education, who have a need for alternative education. I've served the community in years past through 4-H. I've been a volunteer through my homeschool group as my kids have moved out of that and are now part of the public school group. I'd very much like to serve here and help in whatever way that I can. So I appreciate your consideration of my application. I appreciate the hearty discussion that we've had. The conversations have been very good, very enlightening, and I don't envy you your job in making this decision, but thank you very much.
Thank you so
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Adam?
Thank you again for the opportunity to speak with you and answer your questions. Seated to my left here are all qualified candidates, each in their own way. And the fact that everyone's here and volunteer their own time shows that there's interest in getting involved in the town and making sure that our kids are safe and have the opportunities to go to the path that they choose. If appointed to the committee this evening, I can assure you that I'm here for the long haul, and I'll be diving headfirst into the role and making sure that the goals of the committee are met and that we continue to improve not only ourselves as a board, but also helping shape the leaders, the future leaders of our town. No matter the outcome of this evening's meeting, it is still my intention to seek the seat in May in the Maytown election and hopefully serve the town and the schools in this capacity for many years to come. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Adam.
Pat?
So thank you all again. You've got a decision that you ultimately, excuse me, have to make on what's best for kids, what's best for the district, and what's best for the town. So the school budget in fiscal year 24 is $37.6 million. It's roughly 50.101% of the overall town budget. We traditionally are about half. We can't afford to lose 8 months in figuring out the financial cliff that's coming with the loss of revenue and with the incremental operating expenses, and ultimately how that's going to get pulled together. We need a long-term strategy, not just a financial strategy, but an enrollment strategy, a process strategy. Making the decision that you're about to make on what is best for the town and what is best for the district, it is very clear to me. I'm thrilled that we have 3 people up here that are willing to step in, but with all due respect to the other candidates, my resume jumps off the page. I have 35 years of corporate finance experience. I'm a chief financial officer. I was 4 times elected, ironically, to this seat. It's this exact seat that I was elected by this town 4 times to serve. I've balanced 13 school budgets. I've shown partnership with teachers. I have high credibility with teachers. I mean, at one point, I think the Mass Teachers Association offered to endorse me in one of my re-election bids. Told them I didn't know that that would help. But the reality is the teachers know when I give them my word is gold. I have a great working relationship with the administration, and I've been a proven factor in being able to form teams. When I was on the committee, we had an accolade that was given to only 100 committees in North America. And it was because of the advanced placement offerings that we had at the high school. We developed a curriculum that literally said every kid in Pembroke should be able to take an advanced placement course if they choose to do the work. And we drilled our curriculum down from that advanced placement piece. We spent the 9th least per pupil in the entire Commonwealth and had one of the best AP offerings in North America. We had one of the best extracurricular offerings of any town on the South Shore, and our sports programs and our music programs were unparalleled. That's because we made strong, smart, financially conservative decisions, and we got very creative in how we implemented things. We also spent a lot of time on curriculum, and talking about achievement. One of the things that is clear to me is we need to learn what it means to be a school committee member. I'm not here because I have a yearning desire to be a school committee member, which sounds odd because I'm asking you to give me that opportunity again. I'm here because I have a duty to the town. And it is that plain, it is that simple, and it is that candidly innocent. I know what I have to offer to the 4 people that are sitting there. And I know the ability that I have to help them lead and to position them to lead in the future. And I ask you very clearly to give me that opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So I just want to say thank you very much to all 4 candidates. It's a tremendous resource that Pembroke has that 4 qualified candidates will be interested in coming forward to help the town and step up and volunteer. So I appreciate all of your efforts for doing that, and I commend you for doing it as well. At this point, we're going to begin deliberations between the board and the committee, and I encourage you to stay here in the meeting and listen, but if you feel a little more comfortable in the back of the room, that's fine. If you want to stay up here and get a front row seat, that's fine too. But thank you. All right, so I'd like to begin discussions, deliberations with the chair of the school board, and then we'll. The school committee has to work with this person ultimately. So I'd like you to begin the discussions and the deliberations, and then we'll open it up for the board. It'll be a little bit of a free discussion, but if you could just open to.
Well, I definitely have some thoughts, but I'd really like to start with Allison.
Of course.
Lucky you.
Okay, so I definitely think Patrick will be a really good fit because he is going to be able to help us at town meeting more than I think anybody, maybe even sitting at the table, sounds like really can do that. And so I think when it comes to the VOTEC issue and just his experience, just even that small hurdle is invaluable. I also really appreciate his willingness to mentor because I know as a new member, I feel that's really key. We have a lot of experience in different ways, but I just think that what he's offering is important, especially for the him having experience with overrides, like that's huge. Mike?
This is a really tough one, and I think, I'm going to listen to what everyone else has to say as well. I think we really need to talk this out. There are 4 good candidates, 4 excellent candidates. I'll talk about a couple that I like. I mean, I think that, like Allison said, Patrick brings the experience. He's been through everything we're going to go through in the next however many years. He's already been through. He's got that knowledge that we could use, that we need. I'd say Adam is in a similar situation to me where he has young kids and he wants to be on the school committee for a long time because he's going to be involved with schools for a long time. And Adam is a very worthy candidate as well with a lot of abilities, a good skill set that could fit as well. So to me, I'm really torn between the 2, and I really need to talk this out with all of you guys.
First and foremost, to the 4 candidates, thank you for putting yourself out there. I think I've said this a few different times at meetings. I knew I was putting myself out there when I did this, but I didn't realize when I went to Stop and Shop, the frozen food would melt by the time I got down the aisle, because every parent wanted to talk to you about something, somehow, someone, and I hope you're ready for that.
Could I interject really
Sure,
quick?
no,
My
please.
wife saw David at the supermarket last week, and so I know he's not full. She said that every time she saw him, he was talking to a different person.
Yeah. It's good. I mean, you do become the face of the community, and it's good. I said, kids in the system, daughter coming out of the system, it's a lot of fun. I looked at the skill sets of all 4 people, and respectfully, two of you were a piece of paper to me. I didn't know you, young lady, at all, and I didn't know Jeff down the back. As I said, it was just a piece of paper. Yet I was very impressed, and I said, wow, these people are pretty cool. Full disclosure, I've known Patrick probably since I moved here. Adam, I see you at almost every meeting, so that's pretty impressive. The two things I looked at in my mind are experience and also dedication, and to me they kind of go hand in hand. I can certainly make strong cases for everyone that has interviewed here today, and I think I've got the candidate in mind, but I will be honest with you that I could accept any one of the four and not walk away saying, oh wow, we shortchanged ourselves. I think it's four strong people, and again, my mind, I'm probably gonna look at experience first, and without naming names, and kind of dedication second. What's that sense of involvement down the road? So on that, I will pass the torch to Sue.
Well, like all of you, I believe we have four amazing candidates with very diverse qualifications bringing to the table, and obviously, well, let me just start with Jeff, who it's such an impressive resume. I mean, we would be obviously very lucky to have him serve. So it's hard to, it's a difficult decision. He has, the ability to pivot based on his resume. He could probably, I'm sure he would come up with a lot of different ideas for funding the schools, and it's a very impressive resume. And I'm told your name, you go by Paige sometimes, so should I say Paige or Jennifer? Paige. Okay, so I'm going to say Paige. I'm very impressed with your very unique perspective. I would say your perspective is much different than everyone else who came up and that I've heard in quite a while. And you have some very unique and creative ideas that would really sort of benefit us and help us with our solutions to different educational challenges. So I really do appreciate all that you bring to the table. I very impressive. And then, like you, it's hard because I think, Patrick, well, first of all, Adam has been to a ridiculous amount of meetings. He's come to some subcommittee meetings as well. And, this is his third time at bat. He not only went for the appointment before, but he also ran in the past, and then he's back here again, and he's shown a tremendous amount of dedication. And I do believe that his background in operations provides a unique ability to be able to sort of multitask and look at, like you said, the operational aspects of, the financial aspect of the schools, and I really do appreciate that. I think he would be a great fit, and what do I say about Patrick? Patrick he's experienced right off the bat, so it's hard to discount that because he has 15 years of experience, and he could step into the role, take over, and he would be a contributing member. He'd be a mentor to some. I mean, I don't want to say. I mean, David's been on the committee for a long time, so I don't want to say we're a brand new committee. So David has a lot of experience. So I don't want to necessarily say, but I do appreciate the amount of experience and institutional knowledge that he has, and I really do, I think he would be great. I would love to have him on budget subcommittee. I think he would be invaluable. So I'm really torn. I think Patrick and Adam, I think, are probably my top picks, despite, I would really love to have both Jeff and Paige, but we can't have everyone. And I think out of the four candidates, I'm down to the top two. And that's really where I stand. And, I'm just sort of 50-50 on it right now. So I'd love to hear Select Board's opinion.
Very good. Steve, do you want to start?
Yeah.
Sorry, my kids have a breakthrough. I have it silenced, but my kids have the ability to break through. So for some reason, they forgot where I went tonight because it's not an open school committee night.
Oh, that's all.
They don't think you're at the Guns N' Roses concert?
It must be like some kind of emergency.
So I think I would echo a lot of what folks on the school committee would already say. I mean, it's amazing that we have 4 true professionals that are interested in serving in the community, all with really bringing, you know, a different perspective and a different skill set that want to serve on the school committee itself. So no matter, obviously, as Sue said, we can only pick one. So I really hope that for those who would be interested in running again, for whoever doesn't get picked, that everybody wants to stay engaged with the town in one fashion or another, one way or the other. Because we need that. We need good people to be involved with the town, that care about the town for the right reasons, and want to support their community. That's what makes this all kind of work. So another thing that stuck out for me that I thought was very promising, which was that all of the candidates, for the most part, appeared to appreciate, as I appreciate, you know, with kids going through the schools and whatnot, that the politics in the schools, it's got to get out of there. It's a distraction. We need to refocus on education and academics and things like that. And so it was really promising to hear that there was pretty much a wide consensus across the candidates there, and that they would be interested in addressing it one way or the other as well. I did really like what Jen said. I'm sorry, Paige or Jen? I keep going back.
Paige.
Either one. Okay. Which I think was in a sense echoed, especially by Patrick, which is that you want to form something that's robust and fair. I firmly, strongly believe in free speech, especially for the kids, the students, and things like that, but also at the same time, administration and teachers should not be platforming their politics in any way, shape, or form. So that's something that I, as a parent, feel very strongly about. Patrick brings lots of experience that would be super helpful. I do agree with that. Adam brings operational experience, which is a good point, that, you know, that there's a lot of financial experience on the board right now, but operationally, that would be a big help. Especially, you know, Jen, with the novel approach to different things. I really like the out-of-the-box thinking, the creative kind of ideas that could come out of Jen serving on the committee. So, you know, regardless of who gets picked tonight, and I would echo that I'm torn in a lot of ways as well, but whoever gets picked tonight, I really hope that people stay engaged and that they want to run for sure. So that's where I'm at right now. I do lean a certain way, but I'm still open to hearing different things.
Tracy?
I just want to thank all 4 of you for coming out, one of you yet again for the 3rd time. It's really difficult. All 4 of you bring such different abilities to the committee, and I think each of you would be an asset to the committee in very different ways. I think with where the committee stands right now, that the best choice would be to choose somebody who had the experience, who could just jump right in and get going right away. So I'm supporting Patrick as my choice.
John?
Thank you. And then thank you for the candidates for coming out and explaining why you want to run, why you're running for this election too. I'm very happy that you all are going to commit to go forward again, and I do wish you well on that. Before I even start on that, I actually publicly want to thank Susie Scholl for her time on this board, for the school committee. And the reason why I want to finally publicly do that is because I haven't talked to her since she's resigned from the board, and she's my Jersey girl, so I mean, I got to give respect to that. As for the candidates itself, I look at experience, just like Tracy said, of how we can help each other out financially. Institutional knowledge is key. When Lance came up for this seat, he had institutional knowledge from Carver, so I really want to go with to make sure that this budget season is going to work out well and working with us. I've worked with Patrick when I was on advisory, and then when he was on advisory, kind of back and forth. So if I had to pick anyone, I'd pick Patrick Chilcott as the person to be here for the next 8 months.
Thank you. And Rich?
I feel the same. Like, I would pick all 4 of you as truly great, everything, different directions tonight. You know, I just kind of wrote down some things as you guys were speaking, and Jeff, the qualifications, you're more than qualified to be here. And super impressed that you would consider this. Adam has passion. Again, I've attended meetings with him, and his devotion is super strong. Patrick, you got the real experience, hit the ground running. Jen, you hit all the marks. You very versatile in your knowledge about not just public school, but alternative schools and what they have to offer as well. I'm really impressed. I mean, I can't say anymore, truly.
All right, very good. So we'll open it up for a little bit freer discussion if anyone has anything to add.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still torn. I mean, I just think that it's clear that, as we go through the next budget season, it's going to be helpful, definitely helpful to have someone with experience like Patrick. I also think that Adam could be in it for the long haul, and I like the, starting the future now and getting ready for that right now. And I really want to talk it out a little bit more.
You can continue.
One thing that I sort of thought about, looking at this, is that from talking to the community and just talking about kind of the place we're in right now, that we, as a committee, have, I wasn't here, but have gone through a lot, with COVID and coming out of it. And so getting back, I don't want us to, stumble, I guess. Not that we are, but just, I guess, the history, knowing that we can just start working tomorrow is really key for me. And the fact that, I guess, I didn't live here at the time, but, Patrick ran unopposed and was elected as many times. I feel like he has the community support in general. And so that also kind of thinking about the community support side of it, that helped my kind of.
If I may, as a kind of senior ranking member, that was nice of you to kind of, nice way of saying I'm the old guy on the committee.
We do have some experience on the committee.
Yeah. I'm in year 7, and yes, I'm older than Patrick, so that's half the battle. I don't want to slate what we have before us. We've got 4 really solid people. Now, people talk about our inexperience, but the town has seen to it to put us in the place we're in. Okay, either recently elected, actually, I think at this point we've all been elected, no one's been appointed. The way I'm kind of looking at this now is, if you can picture, and I'm using a baseball analogy, you get to September and you might have a chance to sign a veteran that could get you into the playoffs and maybe take you to the World Series, or you call up someone that you want to get a look at and see what happens. And I don't mean that in a condescending sense by anything, but I think we're a solid group. I think we, like anywhere, if you're smart, you check your ego at the door. And we take some good mentoring, and we take some good qualities away from different people. Like I always said, Paige made a comment about scouting and working with the kids. I used to say, as individual dads, we were terrible, but collectively, as about 6 dads, we made one pretty good one. Because we had someone that knew the mechanical side, someone that knew the, and we made it work out pretty good. I think we're a pretty good group. And I think no matter who we add to the group is going to be an asset, and we're going to, learn from them or teach them, or they're going to teach us, is the way I look at it.
I'll say.
Yeah, I look forward to working with whoever we choose, so I just want to get that out there.
Yeah, and I have to say, and I agree with all of your points, Allison. So, and I am a big fan of Patrick, and always was, and voted for him when he ran and whatnot. So there is no negative there. I do believe that the 4 of us are strong in ourselves. I know you're new on the committee, but I've already seen you making decisions and
Having to go first.
Nice. But I mean, you're a very strong member, and I know you're saying, you want mentorship, which I think is great because it shows, you're a humble member.
I want to be good at this.
Member, and I think it's awesome. Yeah. But, I'm with David, we have a great group, and whoever we add to the committee is going to propel us forward. So it's a tough one. It's a tough decision. I think that, Patrick does have some great experience, and it's hard to discount that. At the same time, Adam has longevity, so he would be here beyond, he could start now and be, he'd be great in the future, because we know he wants to run again in the spring anyways, regardless of whether he gets appointed. So, he would be great if we could give him a head start. So I really am torn, so.
I've been a huge proponent of VOTEC education for Pembroke. Adam is too, so, everything I've seen and talked to him, and that makes me feel good that I'd have someone, we see eye to eye on it, and I like that, like, almost 100%. But also after being I just came from the subcommittee meeting, and for VOTEC, and we're gonna kind of have to, there's a process to this that's gonna be difficult to navigate if we want to get this through. And that's where someone like Patrick, who's been through stuff like this before, can really help. Like at the experience, we're gonna have to really thread a needle if you want to get it through. I would just want to make sure that that's what Patrick wants to do as well. That's a tough thing. I'm really all for this VOTEC thing, and South Shore VOTEC right now, things could change, but as I look at it now, that's where I stand. I think South Shore VOTEC is the best way for us to access VOTEC education for our kids. If Patrick agreed with that, and I don't know for sure, there's data to look, he'd probably be the best asset to help get that through. I do know that Adam agrees with that, and that's one thing that I'm pretty torn on, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm not a one-issue person either. There's a lot of other things going on. Possible, we had to recently solve for a budget deficit, and that's the kind of stuff that, Patrick has done in the past, and, this is where I'm somewhat torn on this stuff.
Yeah.
Are we allowed to call for nominations, or is it?
We're going to call for nominations once debate and discussion is exhausted. But I want to give the select board a chance for any follow-up comments or discussion. If there is no further discussion, then I will call for nominations. A nomination will require one member to nominate and another member to second.
I would nominate Pat Chilcott.
I will second. Oh,
That's okay, you can.
no, with Allison.
Okay, I'll
that's
second
fine.
that. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Hearing none, nominations are closed. We have one nominee, that is Patrick Chilcott. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstaining? Very good. Welcome back.
Yeah.
And just a message to all the candidates. Thank you so much for your dedication to apply for this position. I encourage you to apply for the election coming up in the spring, should you choose to. And we need your help. We need your help in the community. We need people like you to volunteer and be concerned enough about the town to volunteer. So I thank you for the service that you did by coming here this evening. Thank you. Is there a motion to close the select board meeting?
So moved?
Select board.
Oh, sorry.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Is there a motion to close the school
Yes.
committee meeting?
Me. I'll move.
Second.
I move.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you.
Jeff, it was nice to meet you. Thank you.